In the lawsuit, Baldoni accuses the paper of having, quote, cowered to the wants and whims of two powerful, untouchable Hollywood elites. And those untouchable Hollywood elites that the lawsuit describes is Blake Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. How hard is that to prove?
Again, you now are actually bringing in third parties because they're not suing, in this case, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. You have to connect those dots with the conversations between the reporters at the Times, the conversations the reporters have with their editors at the Times, and the interactions with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. So I think it is really difficult. And I think that is one thing we have to think about here and look, maybe read between the lines. I did say earlier that the actual malice standard makes it really hard for celebrities to bring lawsuits like this and win them. So why would they bring this lawsuit? And we are seeing a lot more of these types of lawsuits recently, even by public figures, even though they are very difficult to win. And a lot of people speculate, and I think this is one example of maybe they're just trying to play the case out in the court of public opinion, but using the courts to bolster that, to give it a little more authenticity, perhaps. And that's why they're doing this through a lawsuit instead of doing what usually we'd want to see, and that is staying away from the courts, just having not a conversation, but a public discussion about this, not a public series of lawsuits.
And both sides have accused the other of smear campaigns, smear tactics. Do you think that Justin Baldoni and the rest of them that are suing the New York Times, do you think that that's a strong case? Will this hold up? Because the New York Times is defending itself, defending its reporting. $250 million, that's a lot. So how strong is this case?
Again, I think it's not a particularly strong case in light of the high standard of proof they're going to have to make about the Times' mindset. That said, it's not a frivolous case either. Because there are so many facts, because we don't know what the mindset was, because the text messages are so voluminous, so extensive, and you have to look at all of them and really have to dig in, I think this would, in my mind, meet the standard for getting past a motion to dismiss. So that's usually the first hurdle a plaintiff has to get past in a lawsuit. It's something called the motion to dismiss. And if the Times could get this case dismissed at that first hurdle, that's obviously what they're looking for, because it stops it right there. No time, no expense, no stress. But if there's ever facts in doubt, a court is very hesitant to, grant that motion to dismiss. And they're going to say, well, we don't want to kick this out just yet. We'll go to discovery. And discovery is the part of the case where you have people get together either on paper or in some kind of mini hearings, maybe in law firm conference rooms. And, you're going to have some of the key players being interrogated by lawyers. Well, that is where the money starts really piling up. That is where you start to reveal things. That is where the really, the Times wants to stay out of that, and certainly wants to stay out of a trial. So I do think that there's a good possibility that this gets past the motion to dismiss, and that's where the Times is going to start thinking, how much more of this do we want? And how much do we want to open up our editorial thought process and decision-making process to public view?
I know that, as you've said, this has to clear a high bar, but is there any precedence? Is there any case that this reminds you of? What does that look like? What is history telling you?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of celebrity lawsuits, and I will just say there's no one case, but there's a body of work that says it is extremely rare for a public figure to get past this actual malice standard and even get past many motions to dismiss, certainly the motion to summary judgment, which would come after discovery. And it's very rare for these cases to even get to trial. I mean, you see less than 10% of these cases tend to get to trial, and they almost always are resolved in favor of the defendant publication. I mean, you can see why people bring this lawsuit, because it's going to put pressure on the Times to make decisions about how far they want to dig in, how far they want to take it, or perhaps do what ABC did a couple weeks ago in defending a case brought by President-elect Donald Trump, where they settled the case for $15 million, got out quick. And a lot of people have criticized them for it. I'll just say I wasn't in the room for these business decisions. I don't know what they had to deal with, but you see that decision a lot, and that's why these cases do still get filed.
But to your point, aside from you just mentioning that now, it's not really brought up in the news anymore. It survived its few-day news cycle and kind of moved on instead of dragging out. We've been talking about Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively since the press tour of It Ends With Us back in the summer. We're still talking about them now, so it doesn't feel that this is leaving the news cycle. So let's say that this case does get past the motion to dismiss. What specifically are you going to look out for that indicates where this goes next?
Well, I'm definitely going to be looking for, what the text messages really say and what the editors and reporters' conversations about those, about those text messages involve. Because that, to me, honestly, that is what this case hinges on. The other big ticket item, and this goes especially to the back end claim of breach of implied and could show actual malice on the part of the Times, was a promise that the reporter made to the plaintiffs that said, we need your statement on this, all of this, by noon tomorrow. And they asked for it at, I think, 9:45 the night before. But then at, I think, 10:45 that morning before the noon deadline, went ahead and published. That's not great from the Times perspective. So those are the two things I'm looking at. How, what were the decisions made about this? And again, this is kind of what would be put front and center if this case ever got to trial, and probably is exactly what the Times doesn't want anybody to know.
Well, Kevin, there's certainly a lot to look out for. And as this unfolds in the court, I hope you come back on, join me, break it down. Kevin Goldberg, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.